Well, hello there, it's Josh here from racingtoprofit.co.uk in the long-awaited final video review of Cheltenham, taking hopefully a quick whistle-stop tour through days 3 and 4. I've covered quite a lot of, well, a few kind of generic points and things to take away for next year. I will pull together some kind of learning points and horses to follow and some notes to put below these videos. So yeah, let's crack on with it. Day 3, we had the Coral Cup, which I'll get to in a moment. Quick word on the JLT novices, just on top notch really, I suppose. Henderson does like to target the Aintree meeting, and it'll be interesting if he turns up. Strong traveller, good, very good jumper for quite a small horse. He did make a howler of an error. I don't think that cost him. Many better judges than I seem to think York Hill was dossing a bit up the running and kind of won a shade more cosily than the winning margin suggests. But certainly I think those three moving forward could be worth following. Then we moved on to the Pertemps handicap hurdle final, which was a very good result for the stats and my particular shortlists. I tipped 4 there. Presenting Percy drifted and won 11's Jury Duty. He travelled very strongly. I'm not sure if he quite got up the hill or he has simply bumped into a couple of better handicapped horses. I'm not sure, but he travelled very powerfully, kind of on the inside. So he looked to me like he's got wins in him from his mark still. So I'll keep an eye on Jury Duty. Sutton Manor ran well in 5th. I'd have to watch the video again. It may have been a closing 5th. Whether or not, I mean, this was 3 miles. It ran in a way suggesting it may have wanted further. Maybe was outpaced a tad. May actually want deeper ground. I'm not sure, but in 5th place, that was a pretty decent run, I thought. Just getting the result up there. So that was good. So yeah, Rocklander was disappointing. Well backed, 20 to 1. I think he went off about 12s. That clearly wasn't his running for whatever reason. I'm not quite sure. Or he's just a horse that flatters to deceive. But given how he was backed, they clearly expected more from him. So it'll be interesting to see him moving forwards. Let me just skip on to the shortlist. So the stats. There was a kind of the winning profile left 13, which kind of half the field pretty much. There were some negatives on French breds, those that had yet to run over 24 furlongs, and bottom weights you can see there in the 10 years, 0 from 33 and only 3 had placed, which actually left a more manageable list of how many there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, of which we had the first, the third, Barney Douane was in there, the second, Sutton's Man of the 5th, so that went quite well really. Barney Douane went better than I thought. He was a big price actually, so I'm quite pleased he didn't win. I'm not quite sure what I said about him. It may have been a question over the ground, but I think it was more of an unknown. He simply stayed on soft, and his jumping is still a bit scrappy. Whether or not that will just always be the case, I'm not sure. But there's something to take away there. So that was a Pertemps. That went really well. Presenting Percy won with any amount in hand. Not a surprise. He bolted up the last day. He did get whacked by the handicapper, but that was over a shorter distance and on soft. He was totally unexposed over 3 miles, and he was unexposed on good ground. 2 things which could ensure that he improved even further, which he did. Patrick Kelly is clearly a trainer to watch moving forwards, given he's now 2 from 2 at the meeting, having won the same race last year. I should think he'll be trying to identify a potential Cheltenham handicapper kind of before the season starts in autumn. And of course it was another one that Davy Russell was on. That's now the 12th, 13th year in a row or something he's had a winner at the festival. Brilliant ride around here. So yeah, Sutton Manor there came 5th, kind of staying on. He may well have a race in him. It'll be interesting to watch the kind of front 5. Oh yes, Ballymalin is the other I want to take out of this. Twiston Davis has been quiet. He had a quiet festival. He's been quiet since. He had a couple run well in a couple of days before at Leicester and at Sandown. He had a big price winner to make us think that maybe the yard. There actually wasn't a problem with the yard. I'm not sure if there is or not anymore, but in any case, Ballymalone led and was right up there with two stablemates pretty much the whole way, and they set the race up. They looked to go a fair clip to my eye, and anyway, have damaged their chances. But he kept on fairly well. I mean, he could have dropped a lot further back. I thought that was a decent run. His handicap mark will no doubt come down. He's a prominent racer. If he can get loose on the front end, you can see him running a big race. So it'll be interesting to see what Nigel Twiston Davis does with him. But I think he fared best of those that were near the front. Most of the rest came from midfield and further back. So the fact that he kept plugging on there could be taken as a positive. So I'd take Ballymalin out of that as well, I think. Excuse me while I have a sip of coffee to wake me up. Right, I think that's that race done. Let's whiz through some of the others. Ryanair, not much to say on that bar. That was a superb ride by Ruby Walsh, and a superb performance by UDS. Stayers Hurdle, not much to say on that. Yeah, it was heartwarming to see the connection. Well, it was heartwarming to see Lil Rockefeller, who I know some of you backed each way, ran an absolute outstanding race, so good on him. And connections. Then we went on to the Brown Advisory Plate, which, Tango de Julia tipped each way, ran a shocker, which is a slight surprise. Baron Alco, no complaints whatsoever. He got the easy lead, I was hoping he might, well, pretty much easy time on the front end. And he's battled on really well there. His form tied in with Top Notch and a novice chase at Sandown before this. You can see him, and he jumped really well. He's clearly got form at Sandown, so I'll be fascinated to see what Gary Moore does with him. This probably looks to be his optimum trip, or probably the furthest he wants to go. Maybe, but Sandown, 2-4 around Sandown or something, if he can get an easy lead and get in the jumping rhythm, I think he's definitely, he's unexposed as a handicap chaser, and he definitely has handicaps in him from this mark, and is still entitled to be open to a fair amount of improvement. I think that was a decent run, and we'll mark that up and take that forward. The other two are kind of stabs at the prices, who didn't really run well at all. And this was one of the few handicaps during the week. There may have been three, possibly, where the winning profile didn't find the winner. So that happens. Sadly, can't highlight all the winners, but it generally works across the whole week. Looking at this winning profile and trying to jog things in my memory, Mad Jack Mitten, I think, is probably another to take away. I'm not sure if he's just getting a bit disappointing as a horse. Flattering to deceive, but from memory he travelled really strongly in this race, because I remember he was a big price and he was on the short list, and I clearly hadn't tipped him nor backed him, and I was tracking him. He was coming around the inside, I think, and the jockey hadn't moved. I then think he hit the deck and took a fall, but he travelled strongly. Whether or not he would have done much in the finish, I'm not 100% sure. I'm just having a look here to see if my memory is correct. And where indeed he did finish. Mad Jack Mitten, oh yeah, he did fall. Mid-division, headway 11th, Ridden Dispute 4th, fell next. I mean, he wasn't backed either, and John Joe's handicap chases normally go off kind of 14-1 or shorter at this meeting, so who knows what he would have done, but he travelled strongly, so, and again, he's probably got time on his side. The winner is worth discussing. Bit like Super Sunday, who I touched on, I think, in the last video. A few things to note here. Gigginstown were winning this race for the second year in a row. Last year, Empire of Dirt made the shortlist, and thankfully my tipping pin landed on him at 20-1. and I believe this was the first chase winner for Noel Mead at Cheltenham, either ever or for a very, very long time. And the thing to note with him again, he was another. So what was this? This was only his 5th chase start. I know on some kind of points about his experience he may have fallen down, but he was unexposed. And just looking back through his form here, he's clearly versatile as to trip, and stays 3 miles. But again, he was another who's been running well in heavy ground, soft, deep ground, novice graded races, decent races, never beaten that far, and his mark, you know, he came in here on a 1:45. He'd been running on 1:43 in these novice chases. Clearly, as a chaser, he was open to any amount of improvement, both on better ground, both at this trip, in a strongly run race, you name it, and he is absolutely hacked up. So that is a profile outside of trends and stats for me to keep an eye on next year, and maybe, time allowing for each of the races I look at, to actually create a short list of those in form, running in decent novice chases, possibly getting outclassed, possibly not liking the ground, and in any case actually being aimed at a festival handicaps. They were never intended to bolt up in those races and then marked to go up by 10-20 pounds or whatever. He did that really well for an inexperienced horse. He made a clanger at the first and nearly came down, stayed on his feet. Now Empire of Dirt, they've tried to make him into a graded horse. He might still be that if they can find his right trip, but it'll be interesting where they go with him next. You would think he might struggle with handicaps now, but not sure. He's only 6. Definitely one to watch moving forwards. I think that's that covered. Yeah, Baron Alco ran well for the stats, no problem there. I'd take him away. I'd take the top 2. Bouville ran well. He came from a bit further back. I think he's placed at Cheltenham now a few times. But that's that. Nothing to say about the mares, although that was another one for Andy Holding at the Aintree, well, the Cheltenham preview at Aintree. He said, yeah, he couldn't sing the praises high enough of this horse in terms of on the clock. Fairly short price though, but won as expected. And then we had the final race where yeah, the winning profile wasn't near the winner of this one either. Pendra was near the second and I didn't tip him. Oh, so that was painful. Well, watching it was painful. I'm just trying to think if I mentioned him, which would have been an error if I hadn't. I'm not sure if I did. There's a few things to say on this race. So Pendra was a good price. Why was I put off? I think Longson's form was a bit, well, it wasn't necessarily cold, but could have been better. I think I was put off the long break, even though I knew he went well fresh, and I'd had a slight stamina concern as well around here. In the end, that did just pay, but you did feel sorry for the horse. He would have been added on my list of 4 horses that got away. He'd have definitely been the 5th. He was in first time blinkers as well, and Derek O'Connor was booked, so there were quite a few positives there, and he ran well. Doomsday Book, I can't say I was anywhere near him. It looks by the price that not many others were either, but if you had a bit on him, then well done. Interestingly, those 2 were always prominent. So was Premier Bond, and that was a very good run as well. He stayed on fairly well, travelled strongly. Potter's Legend was the main tip, and given he's definitely one to take forward, is Potter's Legend. He was held up right out the back. Now they had a standing start here again. I need to watch the video again. I'm not sure if that was deliberate or he just was slow to get away. I think they held him up too far. He had been held up in his races before, but nothing in kind of this field size. He just had to make up ground because those at the front weren't stopping, and him having to make up ground led to a few niggly errors. He was entitled to make errors because he's still an inexperienced chaser. None of them were kind of awful clangers, but I think they just built up in the end, and then the amount of energy he would have had to use to get into a winning position. He looked like he was coming to win and absolutely just stay past them all, jumping the last. But that effort petered out just kind of in the last half furlong or so. He can only get better. He's 7, a more prominent ride. He clearly travels well. He clearly stays, I think. I think he stayed every yard of this trip, really. Just ran out of gas. So he is definitely one I will take forward for Connections. And of course, Lucy Wadham. She's used to having some decent kind of staying chase on her hand, the likes of the Rev. She's picked up good pots with him over the years at Sandown and a few other places. So Potter's Legend looks like a chaser worth following, and because of his connections may always be a point or two bigger than he should be. So that was decent run there. Gave me a thrill and a run for the money, because jumping the last I did think he may go close. Sadly he didn't. So the stats shortlist in a way found 2 of the first 4 home from a shortlist of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which wasn't too bad. Southfield Royale was the other tip in the race. Dr. Harper didn't run in any kind of race. Southfield Royale was travelling okay, actually, just behind the front 2 or 3 in the perfect spot. He unseated or fell, I forget which. Kind of tried to take offence with him, which is never useful. So yeah, that was disappointing, because I was rather confident he was going to be very close. But he's definitely one to take forward as well, I think. Still rather unexposed as a chaser. Clearly stays. It'll be interesting to see what they do with him next, but clearly his jumping may have to tidy up a bit. So that's the Thursday. How am I doing for time? 16 minutes, that's quite good for me. Now let's rattle through the final day. I don't think there's anything on that. I'm just trying to think on the Thursday. Yeah, I mentioned the novice, kind of that road to respect angle, and one of those things we need to think about moving forwards. And a few horses there to take away as well. Now we moved on to the final day, which was turned into a very good day indeed. Yeah, I did go a bit mad. We came into here with quite a stack of profit, about 23 points or so, and I tipped to ensure that we kind of left with 10 points if the wheels came off, and it didn't go very well at all. Once this loads, this computer gets very slow when I'm recording. Come on. Here we go. So what do we want to say about this? Triumph Hurdle, not much to say on that. Apparently Mega Fortune did some impressive times leading up until kind of whenever he got past, a couple of furlongs from home. Yeah, I think he's bumped into one there. I think that's a good performance from him. I had a little each way tickle, as I mentioned on the blog in the other thoughts section, about 12s, I think. I think that can be marked up, and we know he's a front runner who jumps well and travels well, which is always useful. Defi de Source, nice to see Hobbs and Johnson with a really nice horse. Hobbs was quite emotional afterwards. Horse clearly means a lot, and I think he was feeling the pressure, so it was some relief. They clearly really like him, and wherever he turns up next, I'm not sure I'd want to be taking him on. The County Handicap Hurdle, proper stats buster, and again this is my other learning point about class, which I'll get on into in a moment. But let's have a look at the shortlist. Well, I only left 5, and I don't think any of them ran very well. The stats, yeah, so those with an overall rating 140 or higher, or 0 from 104, 10 places, including 0 from 32, 2 places in the last 2 years, top 8 in the weights in the last 10 years, 0 from 85, 7 places. So that did influence me, but the top 2, first and second, were the top 2 in the weights, I think. And Arctic Fire is a lesson to learn to take forward to next year's festival. In these handicaps, have a look at the top weights, and are there any genuine grade 1 horses running in them? They're rare, they don't happen that often, but there's certainly, forget the stats, forget the trends, is there a horse that could outclass the opposition? I mean, this one had been off 400 odd days, and that's another point to take away. Mullins doesn't seem to send horses to Cheltenham just for the fun of it. If they come, he expects them to run well. Obviously, some don't run well, but they don't come just for the trip, which is useful to know. And yeah, he had 400 odd days off. They clearly felt he was able to run a big race. And looking at it, Strong Traveller, he just is a grade 1 horse, simple as that. Won a grade 2, won a grade 1. Leopardstown gone close. Well, I say gone close, hasn't gone close, but run well against the likes of Faugheen. And simply his handicap mark, I mean, it had come down a bit, to 158 over kind of the time since he was off. But he's just a decent horse. Being by Hurricane Fly, always in the back end of Hurricane Fly and Faugheen. That's decent form. He was beaten in a race here, handicap hurdle off 141. He clearly improved and got a lot better since that race as well, but he had Cheltenham form in big field handicap, so I didn't consider him much at all. Now, I'm not saying I'd have tipped him if I had considered him, but I didn't really consider him, and that was clearly an error. But looking at those horses that have a class, or potentially have a class edge, with proven graded form in the book, is clearly something to note in these big handicaps. We'll move on from that. The shortlist didn't really do well on that particular one, but that was a proper stats busting race. Never mind, that happens with my approach. Then we got onto the 450, which was good fun. I should say I tipped half a point each way, and we'd have definitely got place money at least on the World's End in the Albert Bartlett. He is definitely one to take forward. He was swinging and coming into it well. Given how Penhill won, who knows if he'd have actually won, but it'd have been in there pitching, and it'd have given any backers something to cheer jumping the last, I think. But he didn't. He took a tumbling fall. Thankfully he got up when just trying to make his challenge. That was the kind of last of a few scrappy jumps during the race, so clearly his jumping needs to tidy up, and that may hold him back until it does. Gold Cup, not much to say there. That was one for the kind of Gold Cup winners having proven graded form over 2 miles, which I know the jockey mentioned after the race, and there's some throughout history that have run really well at 2 miles and gone on to be Gold Cup horses. As we know, it's in the back end of Douvan on many occasions. Ran a solid race here. He was the only one actually on reflection doing something really different in terms of being unexposed at the trip, and he probably was the best horse in the race in terms of back class and proven form in grade 1s, I would say, given how he'd had Chase Douvan home, arguably. But that wasn't a race I had strong views on. If you found sizing John well done, great training performance, so that was good fun. Fox Hunters I won't really mention. Pashto Polder had ran well in the race the year before, and yeah, both the front two ran well. Wonderful Charm, if he'd got a better ride, probably would have won. I think the jockey was too bothered about tracking the favourite on that occasion, but there we go, that happens. But yeah, good to see Paul Nicholls have a winner at the meeting. I suspect they'll both turn up at Aintree somewhere, and it'll be interesting to see how they get on. The Martin Pipe went very well. Again, that was another shortlisted. So what was it? 24 run a race. 23 run. My winning profile narrowed it down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and thankfully my pins landed on Champagne Classic, who won at 25 to 1, backed in with late money to 11s and 12s. It was at that race that I remembered they have like I said in the beginning of the first video, the owner's tab within horse race base. So I had a quick look, and Gigginstown were 1 from 6 3 places in the Martin Pipe. Gordon Elliott was also interviewed in the morning on the opening show, I think, and said winning the Martin Pipe the handicap hurdle would be more important than him, would mean more this time round than actually winning the Gold Cup, given Martin was clearly his mentor and taught him a lot about how to train, and he's clearly taken that on board and built on it, and turned into one of the best trainers around of jumpers. So that was good. Always prominent, stays further, always travelling well, and bar a fall was never really in doubt actually to my eyes after a couple of furlongs, and certainly wasn't in doubt when he hit the front a couple from home, because you knew he stayed further, which is always a good position to be in. So that was good race, nothing to focus on there bar the stats and profile trends working, nothing I'd really want to take out of it. But Champagne Classic won with a fair bit in hand, so again might be one to take forward. And then Rock the World, the final Johnny Henderson Grand Annual, possibly one that got away. I have no problem. So yeah, my winning profile again found it narrowed the race down to 6, which included the winner and the third. I backed a couple of big prices, which I would do again. The question is, can we learn from here about staking? I've mentioned each way betting before, which I started to do on days 3 and 4 after some of the one particular nightmare on the Wednesday, and seeing how well I'd done. Kind of 50% of the horses that I'd tipped kind of won or placed. Up to before day 4, that dropped a bit because Champagne Classic was the only one that kind of won or placed, I think, on the day in the end. But Pair of Brown Eyes and Salita, whether or not, and this is with hindsight, half a point each way, half a point win, that would have left 1 point to play with that I maybe could have put on Rock the World. I actually fancied Dandridge, probably the shorter price ones, who wasn't on the shortlist, so I'd be kidding myself if I'd have said I've tipped him, which means there's even more to learn. But Rock the World, same prep as last time. He'd run well in this race the year before, and that was probably really the main thing for why he should have been much higher up in my thinking. He was a double figure price in the morning, 10 to 1. His price didn't really move. Transpars, he had a wind op, which I may have read somewhere but had forgotten about. That was in the public domain before this race, but he'd run well in the race before. It did have a really weak feel to it as a handicap chase, and he should have been higher up in the thinking. Simple as that. On the short list, and had Cheltenham Festival form, which the two selections didn't. They were bigger price, so I didn't want to leave them in case one of them did win. Clearly I expected one or both to go a lot closer in place and actually leave a decent profit on the race. Salita's race was messed up before the race began, got in a horrible mess kind of mentally, I think, and was really upset. So she was never going to run well. Pair of Brown Eyes, I think, just wasn't good enough. Simple as that. Thean Val ran well. So I think that was that. As I say that, what horse do I want to remember? Yeah, Rather Be, sorry. He was brought down early in the Martin Pipe. I was really quite bullish on him, more so than Champagne Classic. I thought he had a really interesting profile, and it was Henderson. I'd be interested to see if he turns up at Aintree. Strong traveller, good jumper. I like most Henderson horses, well, hurdlers especially, seems to have a kind of turn of gear and a bit of speed, and I can see him running well at Aintree if he turns up, and if he's not too bad for being brought down. I don't think it was a heavy brought down, but he was just unlucky. No fault on the jockey. He tried to settle him in midfield. Horses come down right in front of him, nowhere to go. As I said, generally I will, the last couple of years, a few of my tips that haven't run well at Cheltenham or have run well have gone on to kind of run very well or win within the next kind of 3 or 4 starts, which makes sense given that in general a lot of the profiles for these races are pointing you towards lightly raced horses, who haven't had many runs or wins in handicaps, who are still open to improvement. So in theory, on the next few starts, they should kind of be getting better anyway. And I think that's it. I don't think there's much else to mention there. I think I've covered a lot of the general points. Arctic Fire is that class point, looking at the top of the handicap, looking at proven kind of grade 1, grade 2 winners running in handicaps, and making a case for them. He actually qualified on the Irish class droppers angle. I will have a look through some of my micro systems to see what went well, what didn't, but some of them highlighted some decent price winners and some decent price placed horses that I know many of you backed each way or had kind of small fun interest, kind of £2 each way, £2.50 each way bets, which made the meeting even more enjoyable. So I think that's it. Overall, very happy with the approach and the stats and the way the shortlisting worked. Plenty of confidence to take forward, moving forward into bigger races throughout the rest of the year and next season, and of course into next year's festival. A few learning points there, a few profiles of horses to look at that look interesting, and a few things to take away in terms of my own approach, again as always, to the shortlists and to odds, to how I approach them, betting each way, the starting bank, etc, etc. But I would have bitten your hand off for 43 points, 4 winners from 13 races that I looked at, 43 points profit, over 100% return on investment. We then had the added benefit of Chaser Spud winning at 25s for us in the Midlands Grand National on the Saturday. So all in all, it was a 63 points or so, or 62 points profit week, which was rather good fun. So if you joined us, I hope you had a great and entertaining week. If you didn't, hopefully you may join us next year for what will hopefully be another enjoyable and profitable festival. But it won't be 43 points every year. Cheltenham can chew you up and spit you out, but I'll be trying my best to ensure that it doesn't. And with that said, I think I've covered everything I need to. As I said, I will put some notes below this video, especially for those of you who probably haven't been bothered to watch the videos and you therefore won't be listening to this message now, but I'll try and pull everything together, or some of the more salient points, in some brief notes below. But all that leaves me to say is thank you for watching. I hope you've found something useful within these videos and something to take away moving forwards. And hopefully some of the horses highlighted can run well and win in the weeks ahead. But for now, this is Josh saying bye, and thank you for watching, and see you again soon.